What's up, everybody? It's your girl Michi G, and I'm back with another video. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm so glad to have you. For those that maybe this is your first time watching any of my videos, I'm Michi G. Nice to meet you. I am the author of the book, I Lost My Mother, Now What? Memoir of a Motherless Daughter. And if you're interested in checking that out, the link will be in the description below for that. But yeah, so I'm the author of that book, and over here on my channel, we pretty much get real transparent about grief. We are actively healing and working through our emotions of grief. As a matter of fact, today, yes, today, I have just coined a new term for myself. I am now a grief transparacist. Yes, I'm coining that term. I'm not a guru. I don't have all the answers. But I am someone that's actively working through every emotion that I feel with grief. So welcome. Before we get into this video, you're going to want to be family. You're going to want to join this channel because we're going to work together on this grief thing. So go ahead and click that subscribe button just below this video, just so that you're notified as soon as I drop every single video. Also, click the bell that's next to that subscribe button, just so you get notified as soon as I drop a video. And also, just to help me out with engagement, go ahead and thumbs up this video and share this video if you found it helpful. And, tell a friend, because again, grief is something that we're all experiencing right now, for the most part. And I just want to help people. Like, we're a community, so help somebody else out other than myself. But again, welcome. So as you can see from today's video, my transparency moment or my transparency topic today is going to be guilt and grief. If you've been following my last two videos, we've so far covered anxiety and grief, and last week we covered addiction and grief, and I got real transparent about how those things affect me. And so today's topic is guilt and grief and how it affects me. Guilt is one of those things that a lot of us suffer with, but we don't really want to admit it or talk about it. Or if we do admit it, we really don't want to talk about it. So we're going to unpack all of that today. We're going to start with the definition of guilt. Obviously, we know what guilt is, but let's really read the definition so that we're crystal clear on what guilt is. By definition, guilt is feeling responsible or regretful for a perceived offense, whether it be real or imaginary. And it says can be part of the grief reaction. That is what I'm talking about. Most of the time when we feel grief, I think that it's because of death in some type of way, or loss in some type of way, because grief doesn't necessarily just mean you lost someone you loved. It could be anything that you lost. So let's unpack this a little bit. So in my book, if you've read my book, or if you haven't read my book, I talk about the 5 stages of grief. Those 5 stages, if I can remember off the top of my head, were denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. But there's technically 7. If we're being honest, there's more, because there's a lot that comes with grief that we don't realize, but technically there's 7 total stages of grief. The last 2 stages of grief are guilt and shock or disbelief. So let's talk about guilt. With guilt, it can sound like, I should have been there, man. If I just would have been there, maybe I could have saved them, or if I would have did this would have turned out different, or like, just anything that causes you to beat yourself up about losing a specific loved one, that's guilt. That's the exact feeling of guilt. So to be transparent for myself, some guilt moments that I had when I lost my mother, one was not calling 911. If you've read my book, I talked about how I lost my mother from the start of her battle with breast cancer to the very last minute, to the end. And I had a moment where, in her last moment, she was kind of having like a panic attack, and I was asking her, do I need to call 911? Like, my dad was even like, oh, should we call 911? I asked my mom, and she just was like, no, I'm fine. And it's like, okay, so I trust my mom because, I just thought she was the strongest woman in the world, and she appeared to be fine other than the anxiety attack. But looking back at it, I'm like, now that she's gone, my dad really like beats himself up about not calling 911 as soon as I got there or even before. But looking back at it, I'm like, I kind of feel guilt for that too. Like there's always that thing in the back of my mind that's like, well, darn, maybe if I would have called 911 on my way over to the house, just in case, maybe she would still be here. But then I think, like, she was already spiraling with her health. So, I mean, there's nothing that I literally could have done. But that doesn't help me with the fact that there's that guilt that I should have done this or I should have done that. Also, just to be transparent, I feel guilt when it comes to my siblings. So when I was taking care of my mother, I was pretty much with her pretty much all day, every day. Thank God that the company I was working for at the time allowed us to spontaneously work from home, like right when she got diagnosed with breast cancer. So I was with her pretty much from 4 a.m. in the morning to 9 a.m. at night, just always with her every day. And, my siblings had other things going on. And, of course, we knew, like, my mom appeared to be, like, this strong person. So I think for me, I was in denial about how bad she was getting super quick. And so by the time that she passed, I just thinking back over it, I'm like, dang, maybe I should have reached out to my brother or reached out to my sister and be like, hey, mom's declining. But I didn't realize it back then because I was so like, I can save her, I can help, like, And so I'm guilty with that because I'm like, did I rob my siblings of being there for my mom in her last hours? They probably didn't realize she was as bad as she was, And so there's guilt with that. We're like, dang, maybe I should have been more transparent and been like, no, this happened with mom today. Or like, y'all probably need to like come around a little more. Or like, I just didn't realize it. So, but yeah, in the back of my mind, that's a guilty thing for me. Now that I know more about health and like I'm diving more into holistic health and just the importance of exercising more and really like taking vitamins and minerals and different herbs and things like that, I feel guilty now because I'm like, man, if I could have just, way before my mom was even diagnosed back in, I think it was 2014, I just wish, like, even in childhood, I wish I just had the knowledge to be like, Mom, no, we got to make a routine to exercise. We got to make sure we eat more vegetables and fruits and all these different herbs that I now know about. And I'm like, man, my mom could probably still be here if I just could have had all this knowledge back then, like even her first time getting cancer, if I just would have knew like this information. And sometimes I let that beat me up. So those are my guilty things that I experience on a day-to-day basis sometimes. So also in recent news, I was watching like the Nick Cannon show where he talked about losing his newborn son. I think he was maybe 6 months or so. And I love the transparency that he showed on his show. He had some grief counselors come on his show and just kind of helped him with what he was feeling. And some key things stood out to me that they said about guilt specifically. One of them said that guilt is the constant companion to grief, meaning they go hand in hand. It's comforting. A lot of people would rather feel guilt than to feel helpless. And I heard that and I was like, man, like I would rather, that makes sense. Like our brains just automatically go to guilty feelings than to just say, look, I'm helpless. I don't know how to feel. I don't, so that made perfect sense to me. He also said the fact that for those struggling with grief, the fact that you even feel guilty means that your love for that person is unmatched. You pretty much did your job in terms of the love that and how you cared about that person. So that's always a good sign, not to beat yourself up about. We can go on and on about what we could have done, what we should have done, what we would have done, but you love that person at such a deep level. Like, be okay with that. Be okay with that. Lastly, also they said that grief is to be witnessed, not to be consumed. And I was like, yes, that was my confirmation that I needed. Sometimes we get so caught up in like, oh, I'm having a bad day, I'm grieving, I just want to sit in this, I just want to do nothing, I just want to... But it's like, no, like, it's to be witnessed. Other people are going through grief, you're going through grief, but let's actively work through it. Specifically with guilt, work through it. Don't stop and get caught up in it. Like, keep going, keep going. Your loved one wants you to keep going. Don't get so consumed in grief, but just witness it and work through it. So those are key things that stood out to me, and I thank Nick Cannon for it, even though I don't know him. But so thankful that he was or had that transparent moment on his show. That was everything to me. So just to kind of wind down this video, every transparency moment video, I try to always have a solution, at least something to work on. And honestly, there's solutions and suggestions for myself. You know how sometimes, I don't know if y'all are like me, but sometimes I gotta like write stuff down so I can come back and read it, or I have to record stuff so I can come back and watch it, just for me to be encouraged for myself. Because again, I don't have all the answers, but these are just some suggestions that I have for you, for myself, but also for you if it helps when you find yourself being consumed with guilt in terms of grief. So one, make sure to have a positive thought. For every guilty thought that you have, mark it out with a positive thought. So darn, like I wish if I could have just been there for X, Y, and Z. For my mom, I'm gonna say it for myself. If I just could have maybe called 911 sooner from my mom, like maybe she could have still been here. But to switch that out, my mom, if you never knew her, she always said, you cannot escape death. So when it's your time to go, it's your time to go. It doesn't matter if, and my husband reminded me of this, it's like it doesn't matter if you could be in the same room with the person. If God wants that person home, that person is coming home. You can't, there's literally nothing we can do. So don't get so down on yourself with the guilt. So I always find comfort for myself knowing that my mom knew that one day her time was going to come, and she lived her life like her time was going to come the next day. Always. She was sweet. She was kind. She literally saved souls and brought people to Christ. And she had a super positive impact on this world to the small amounts of people that knew her. And so she did a job well done. So no amount of what I could have done, what I should have done, she did a job well done on this earth. So that's my positive thought for my guilty thought. Also, when it comes to guilt, use that guilt to help others. You know, going back to the conversation of being consumed with guilt, do you know that there, for one person, like, so let's say you are struggling with guilt. There are a million other people out there that are also struggling with guilt. Like, get out there and talk about it and spread the word about, like, man, I'm struggling through grief, but this is how I'm working on it. I'm a work in progress. Find you, make a support group, whatever you got to do, but help it. Use that guilt to help other people. Don't be consumed by it. That's, you know, just make sure we're helping people, doing our job. So yes, make sure you're using your guilt or whatever it is that you're feeling to help others during your time of grief. Sometimes there is healing in helping others. So get out there and help people. And lastly, make sure you forgive yourself. Nothing you can say to yourself to feel guilty or maybe I should have did this, maybe I should have done that. Like I said, it doesn't matter. That person was going to go no matter if you were there, no matter what you could have done. I literally tried everything to save my mother. I tried holistic things, herbs, black seed oil, everything that was like, oh, this helps, you know, cancer. I tried it all and I couldn't save her. And I literally remember coming home to my husband and breaking down, crying, screaming, like I don't know what to do. And no matter how guilty I feel, like, there's nothing I could have done. So it's no use of harboring on guilt. Forgive yourself. It's okay. God knows your true intentions. It's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up with just saying that I'm praying for each of you out there. When it comes to guilt, guilt is no joke. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. I would love to be like, I got all the answers for guilt and this answer that helps you, but it's not. It's a work in progress. And so I'm praying for you watching this video, for the guilt that you may feel. I want you to know that I love you. And even for myself watching this video back, I'm praying for you, self, and I love you, self. And we're going to keep continuing to work through these things. It's a day-to-day process. Some days are good and you got it. Some days are bad and it's like, okay, I'm losing my mind. I'm consumed with guilt. But we're working on it and we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop. We're actively healing over here. So, with that being said, guys, thank you so much for tuning into this video. Hope to see you next week. Dropping videos every Friday. So make sure you come back to the video. of course, you probably won't have to come back because you're subscribed. Go ahead and click that subscribe button because you didn't do it the first time when I told you to. But that's okay because you can still click it right below. But anyway, thank you guys so much. I love you all. I'm praying for you all. And let's see you next week. Bye.